Hello, welcome to episode 3 of the Trail project. Now I'm going to get straight into today. We're going to start off with the shocks and then hopefully get onto the transmission and mounting the servo to the front axle. So these are all the elements that go into making one of these Icon shocks. Now these are an upgrade item to the standard plastic bodies because they've got aluminium bodies with a nice logo on there, and they've got a fake reservoir as well, which is a bit disappointing. I would have liked a real reservoir, but the rest of the parts are mainly standard anyway. These are special shock shafts. I'm not sure what they're coated with, but it's a special coating to stop leaking and to provide a smoother sort of movement in the shock. But yeah, I'm going to build one of these up and then I'll time-lapse the rest. But I've built loads of these on the channel, particularly in the drift projects and the mini projects. So if you want to go check out how to build one of those little racing shocks, feel free. Go back into the build series and you'll be able to see. But I'm going to build one of these now, and we'll go through it step by step. Before we start, I recommend getting a set of these. These are shock pliers, and they've got different sizes for different size shafts in there, because no matter how hard you try, if you get a normal pair of sort of pliers, these have got serrated teeth on, no matter how much sort of pressure you put on and tissue or fabric or whatever to protect these from scratches, you're always going to leave scratch marks. Nearly every shock shaft I've tried to twist the eyelet on, when you try and twist that on, you always twist the shaft and it always scratches it up and causes leaks. So get a pair of these. You're going to prevent the shafts from getting scratched, and they're really cheap as well. So yeah, definitely get a set of these if you're wanting to make some shocks and not scratch the shafts. So the first step is to assemble the aluminium body. So I've got one of those. I've got a couple of O-rings and a plastic spacer and the small screw-on cap just there. So put one O-ring in the end, put a little plastic spacer, another O-ring, and then we put this little screw cap on there, and that's the bottom of the shock assembled. And then we screw. This is the spring tension adjuster, whatever you want to call it, spring preload adjuster, that screws on. So wherever you want that, it's probably best actually to leave that right near the top, just so it's easier to get the springs on. The main body's been assembled, we can put that to one side and we can start assembling the shock shaft. So I've got a couple of little C-clips, E-clips there, we've got the piston, and that's about it. So, you're going to put a C-clip on first. There we go. And then you want to place the piston in, by the piston, that piston part there. Then another C-clip, E-clip goes on the end to hold it and capture it in. There we go. I hate those clips, they're so annoying. Then what we do is we thread that through the shock. What you might want to do, what has been suggested to me, now Axial did provide shock oil, 30 weight, so I'm going to put that in for now, I can always change it for one. But what you might want to do is just put a little bit of shock oil onto the shaft when you thread it through. Just put a bit on a tissue like that, and then just apply a bit of that to the shock shaft, just for when you thread it through so you don't damage the O-rings. It's something that's been suggested to me, so I may as well do it. So I've just put a bit of that on there, and that should thread through quite nicely. There we go. And now this is a little bump stop, so I assume it's so that you're not bottoming out the suspension on the links, you're actually doing it on the shocks instead. But we can always take that off if we want a bit more suspension travel. So now we get our shock pliers and really hold that down tight and thread on the eyelet. Now I've already pushed the little ball, plastic ball end in there, so I don't have to do that. But yeah, they should just thread on. Now in the instructions it does specify that these shocks are 96mm from eyelet to eyelet. So you can always adjust this later on, but for now I'm just going to thread it on a little bit and see what happens. There we go. With these balls you can tell when they're getting tight, because they start to struggle to move, so if you've tightened it up too much they won't move as well. So I'll tighten that down just to the end of the thread and see what happens. There you go, it's still free to move and it's down at the end of the thread, so we're good. And there's no scratches to that shock shaft at all, which is good. Good news. So now I've done that, what we can do is we can fill it with oil. Filling a shock with oil is an easy enough process. So we've got obviously 30 weight oil supplied by Axial. So what I suggest is just push the piston down a little bit just to let it flow through the gaps. I'm going to fill it all the way up. So that's filled up most of the way. When you look at it really close, you won't be able to see it on camera, but it actually dips in the middle. But you just want to cycle this shock up and down just to release a big air bubble like that. See, a load of air's come out of it now, so we can fill up a bit more. And just keep cycling it up and down just to release all the air bubbles. And then any excess we just wipe off from the top. Now shock oil does tend to get everywhere, but it's easily wiped off with a rag or anything. So that's the shock filled and mostly bled of air. So what you can do is you can just leave it sat up like that for a while, and all the air will bleed to the top anyway. But that cycling just speeds up the process. But that looks pretty good. So now we can apply the top cap, and that'll be it. The shock done. So after the shocks are full of oil, you're going to there's a little O-ring in there, which you want to make sure is seated properly. But yeah, so there's a little O-ring in there, and you may as well push the little ball, nylon ball in there as well. There we go. So we've done that. So what we may as well do is attach this fake reservoir, which is just held in by a little hex nut, well, hex screw. Now it would have been nice to have proper reservoirs. I'm not sure why they're on some types of shocks. I don't know. It's sort of a new thing to me. Would have been nice to have them, but it's a bit less effort to put these together without them. So there we go. So that sticker does come separate. You have to put that sticker on yourself. Make sure the O-ring's screwed on properly, and just screw that down. So when that's nice and tight, you want to really crank that down, make sure that seal's perfect and that you've got no oil leaking out. You want to add the springs. Now this is a 2-spring setup, which I'm new to. We've got these are colour coded by Axial. You've got red, which is super soft, and then you'll have white, which is soft, green, which is medium, yellow, which is firm, and blue, which is super firm. So I've got a green here and a red. The red one goes on first. And now this is to split the springs up so they don't crush against each other and get all twisted. So that goes next. And then you get this is a medium spring. And then you have the actual the spring capture part, and that goes on. So when you're doing that, you want to put the preload adjuster all the way to the top, just so you can compress the springs as much as you can, and it makes it compressing the springs easier anyway. And then you can actually put that capture part on and then put it back, and then you can tighten that down to wherever you want. It just makes it easier. But yeah, they look really nice. So it would have been nice to have some proper reservoirs and some aluminium caps and aluminium preload adjuster, but there is a hop-up option for the preload adjuster, which is nice. But we'll see how they go. We'll see if they leak. But they look quite nice, and yeah, I've got another 3 to build, so let's hope I don't get oil everywhere. go, all 4 shocks built, very nice looking. So I've got to mount them to the axles really quick, and they go, you can see the links here, just pull this drive shaft off. So they mount to the same place as the bottom links. So you've got the link there, and this is the link mount. And the shock mounts to the same place, and the shock goes on the outside, and the link goes on the inside. So it's important to get that the right way around. I was going to build the transmission, but it appears I'm missing a part. I'm missing that gear there. So I've got everything else, I just don't have that gear and I can't find it. I've not thrown it away because I haven't emptied my bin since I started this build. I've checked everything in the box and it's not there, and I've checked all the parts trees and it's not there. I cannot find it anywhere. I'm going to leave the transmission for now and see if I can find it later. We're going to move on to the steering and attach the servo to the front axle and get the steering link in. So because this is an axle mounted servo, we've got this aluminium plate that sits on the top there, and then the servo sits on top of that. So first we need to mount the actual, where the servo screws to, we need to mount those to the plate. It's got an elongated screw end there and just a normal hole there. So there is a bit of adjustment in there. Keep the one with the adjustable hole fairly loose. So it's got a bit of movement in there. There we go, just so you can still move it around. But the other one, you can just mount straight to it. So the plate looks like that. And obviously this servo, this is my high-tech. So if you skipped at the start, this is my high-tech HS646WP Ultra Torque waterproof servo. That's what the WP stands for, and obviously it's blue. So usually blue servos are waterproof. So that slides onto the plate like that, and that is then mounted to the axle. So to bring that in, it's going to look like that. Now I'm not mad keen on this look, but as I've said before, I am building this kit as stock as I can make it, and then I'm definitely going to look to doing a chassis mounted servo later on. So now it's time to attach this plate to the axle. That's held in with 2 countersunk screws, and the horn goes on the left hand side. So that part there goes on the left hand side. Now I haven't centered this servo yet, it hasn't been plugged in. So I'm just going to leave, I'm not going to attach the steering link to the servo yet, I'm just going to leave it, and when I hook that up it will centre itself, and then I can reset the servo horn and then connect up the linkage. If you're using a screwdriver like I was just there, got my Bosch IXO, allow the plastic to cool for a little bit, because if you're doing a fresh thread in plastic like that it will heat up, so just allow it to cool for a little bit and then always tighten down with the screwdriver afterwards, just so you don't risk stripping anything out. And there we go, that's the servo mounted on the axle. So again, I'll flip that round when the servo is actually centered when I turn it on, but for now I'll just leave it as is. So we're going to do the link, the front link now, and the link from the servo horn to the whole system. So the links are similar to what I've done before. Remember to thread the grub screw into the eyelet first. Before you've threaded that in all the way, just a little tip, push these nylon ball ends in first, like that. Now you can see that's free to move. It's got a lot of movement in there. So keep screwing that down. You can always put a little screwdriver through there just to give you a bit more grip. So screw that down all the way until you feel that ball joint, that nylon ball end, starts to firm up a little bit. So I can go even more. There you go. See, I can't really move that. That's not easily movable. So I'll just back it off a little bit. A bit more. And there we go. It's perfect. So that's screwed in just enough that there's enough movement in there, but not too much that it's stiff. And then what we do is we go and thread that into there, into the actual link itself, and just crank it down. That's it. It's as easy as that. So we'll do the other side. Start it off, then snap the ball in, put a screwdriver or something thin through, and keep tightening it down until you feel that ball start to stiffen up. Screw it into the end of the link. Now this one's slightly different in that the actual eyelets are slightly angled, pushing it the wrong way. They've got a bit of angle to them, just so it sits away from the axle. Now ready to attach it to the knuckles. I've got a couple of screws to do that with. There's a couple of spacers involved as well, a couple of washers and stuff like that. So this bottom link sits on the top of the knuckles like that, and that link sits on top of there as well. This big long screw feeds through the little link. Then there's a big spacer, and then that feeds through the top of the longer link, and then that screws through that part of the knuckle there, so through the front hole. Now it doesn't matter if you strip that out, because there is a nylock nut that sits at the bottom of that to attach it on. So if you strip that out, it doesn't really matter. You can just hold it with a pair of pliers. So that's one part of the steering there. Now obviously that attaches to the servo, but we're not going to do that now. So we'll just attach to the side. There's a screw that goes through there, that goes through, and then the nylock nut goes on the bottom. I don't know why I'm making it difficult for myself. I can just get the wrench and use that to hold the nut rather than with a pair of pliers. That is the front steering link, all done. Got quite a lot of steering at angle as well, which is good. But yeah, very happy with that.